Here's a family picture that has a family, mother, dad, some kids, standing in formal clothes at some event, perhaps a wedding or wedding reception, or they're happily dressed and they're getting their picture taken. And it's a nice picture, except there's a few things wrong with it that we could fix in Photoshop. There are four things particular that I want to take you through. One is the little girl here is holding her new dress up, and she's got it pulled a little higher than you might want to have it. So we're going to lower this dress so that it goes down more into her legs, and it still looks like she's standing there cutely holding her dress up. The second thing we're going to work on is there's a little boy climbing the stairs back here, and he's half hidden and he just doesn't need to be there. So we're going to make a patch out of these stairs and put it on top of him so that he's not visible. The third thing is these three young men up here, again, not part of the picture, just taking a seat up there, and we want to remove them. And the last thing of the four is that this little girl right here is going through the stage of losing her baby teeth and getting her adult teeth. And we're going to fix her teeth so they look a little more mature and make the picture work out. There are other things that we could do as far as maybe tucking this little boy's shirt in, like this shirt is tucked in, or removing some of the chips in the granite on these walls. But we'll just go with those first four things. Now, as the picture comes in, it came from a digital camera, and when I opened it in Photoshop, it's background with a lock on it in the layers channel. So I'm going to just take that name background, and I'm going to call it original. And that means that that's when I OK that, the lock goes away and it's original. That just means that that picture is going to be saved as a layer as the original picture. And I'm going to grab this layer and I'm going to pull it down to the Make New Layer button, and it automatically it copies it and it calls it original copy. Then I'm going to turn off the original. I'll just save that for a while, and then I'll work on the original copy so that I have something to go back to if I make a mistake. Now, one more layer. I'm call this layer 1. I'm going to rename that dress, and that's the one I'm going to deal with fixing the little girl's dress. So I'm going to take my zoom tool and I'm going to come up real close on the picture. And what I'm going to do with my Polygonal lasso tool, get all my tools lined up here, right? I'm taking my Polygonal lasso tool and I'm going to cut around the existing dress that's being held up here. I'm going to start in her fingers and carefully clip around the dress that's being held by her thumbs and fingers. Coming across here with the Polygonal lasso tool, when I get into this area, I'll carefully go up between her fingers and her thumb and pick up that cloth, and then I'll come down the back side, and when I get around the feature of the dress is this triple hem, and I sort of zig and zag out of that, come down around the back side, come around this little slip that's showing underneath the dress, and then come back to the hemline and continue on around until I'm going to trap or contain all of this front part of the dress. Here's that hem again where I zig and zag out of that, and come up, finish on, and as I get back to the wards where they first started, the little lines connect, the zero shows up by the pen tool, and now I have the marching ants. It's picking up this entire front face of the dress. Now I'm going to take it off the original copy here. That's where the dress exists right now. So I'm going to be on that layer, and it's lit up blue, and with those marching ants, or that marquee, I'm going to copy what's inside of that. So Command C, I've copied it onto the clipboard, and then I'm going to go to the dress layer and I'm going to paste it there, Command V. Now if I turn off the original copy and also have the original turned off so that it's not in the way, if I turn this off, you can see I can see that it's on this new layer. Now I'll turn the other one back on so I can measure things, but I'm going to use this dress layer. And when I go to my move tool, be sure you go up here into the menu and have this show transform controls switched on, or just click it so there's a check mark. And the bounding box shows up here. Now what I'm going to do with the bounding box, I can stretch the bottom, pull it down. I'm coming to this the anchor point here in the middle of the bounding box, and I get this up and down arrow, meaning I'm going to pull it up or push it down. I'm going to pull this down until it comes much lower than it was on our legs there. Now notice that it's also dropped a little bit here from the top. I could actually take this and stretch it and pull it back up, but one side seems to come up here better than it is over here. You can see a double line here and a single there. So there's another place over here where as I pull it down, then the back, the original dress is sort of showing off to the side here. There's a tool that we have in Photoshop up here under the menu under Edit. Now make sure you have your let's apply that because we've stretched it. Okay, so we have to go to the Move tool and just click on that, and it gives us the Apply, and so we can continue. If we didn't get that Apply approved, we wouldn't be able to continue until we did. All right, the black arrow has selected the bounding box of just that front dress, and we're still on that layer. Under Edit, you go down to Transform. And in Transform, there's a very interesting and powerful tool in Photoshop called Distort. And that allows you to pull just one corner at a time, or stretch things out, or fiddle with it a bit. For example, I'm coming up here to this upper right anchor point, and I'm going to pull that, and you can see I can kind of stretch and pull and realign the top of that where she's holding the dress, so it's where it used to be. And over here there's a little bit of a drop, so I can come over here and pull that one and just stretch it and tighten it a little bit and get it to look like she's holding it in her fingers, but that it's going to be in place here. So now the line's going across here, and I'm getting a nice thumb and finger thing happening. And I've hit my up arrow twice now just to get that on line here, and the thumb and the fingers are still working. So that's working for me. Now down here you have the original is sticking out a little bit, so just grab this corner with this, still using the Distort tool, and just pull it to the left a little bit and stretch that out until it covers. And there it's covered that, and the fingers are there, and the line across here is working out. I came a little deep and I lost a little back up, but I still am okay with covering the part I wanted to cover. So now when I go back to my arrow tool, my Move tool, and click on that again, it wants me to apply because I've done some stretching here. And when I hit apply, then you can see my new dress piece, that's off and that's on. So I've done the job there. I haven't lost anything. I've just made the dress a little longer, but no one would have known that in the first place. So that's the first thing done. Now I'm going to go up here. I'm taking the Navigator, this little red square, and driving up so I can see my second problem. I'm going to slide the Navigator bar back a little bit, so I'm backing up somewhat. Now I'm going to do what's called a patch, where I take this even stair, granite stair with rounded steps and shadow. I'm going to take that and I'm going to make a patch out of here, and I'm going to put it over this little boy and cover him up so that we can't see him anymore. Now the way to do that is I'm going back to the layers. I'm going to make a new layer, and then above dress here I'm going to call that layer let's see, steps, because I'm going to use the steps as my patch. Okay, so I'm going back to the original because that's where the pixels are for this. I'm taking my Polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to go to the top of the stair. See, it's pretty level up there, the top of that stair. I'm going to click right on the top of that stair and come down quite a ways into the middle of this step system. And then I'm going to come across into the middle of the people here, come back up to that upper step line, and then back across so that I'm getting the steps across the top. And when that gets, the point comes back to the beginning, that little circle shows up, and when I click they connect, and I've got the marching ants going around. Okay, now I need a copy of this so that I have the steps in particular. The people I'm going to erase this and take that away, but I need the steps over here because I'm going to stretch these steps, and so that They'll cover up this little boy. So going back to the original, I'm there now. Command C copies everything inside of this marching ants or this marquee. And then I'm going to go to the steps and I'm going to say Command V and paste it on the steps. Now if I turn off the original, there's my copy of the steps and some of the people, but that's going to go away. I'm going to turn the original copy back on so I can see. I'm still got steps activated with my move tool. I'm going to take the steps and I'm going to slide them to the right. Now to facilitate this, I need to see where that little boy is going to end up. So I'm going to go over here in my the opacity of that step is 100%. I'm going to come down here and get the bar to show up, and I'm going to take that to about 70%. So I'm going to make it somewhat transparent. And when I do that then, and I say, all right, Mr. Patch, here it is. I'm going back to that step. I'm going to start sliding it over. Now look what I hold the shift key down so it goes straight over. See that little boy that's now inside of the jacket of this man. See, he's the new part of that new patch. This is the old boy that we're covering. He's on part of that new patch, and I'm sliding the steps over, so I have steps and steps, and then I'm getting to the original shoulder of this man is right here. But this little boy now, his head and his shirt and everything is behind the man here. And that's what I want. So I'm going to take the opacity from 70 and slide it back up to 100%. And this is I'm seeing my new patch against the old piece. Now turn off the steps, just the eye. It's still active, it's still the blue one, but I'm turning it off so I can't see it anymore. And then I'm going to go to the magic lasso, the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to start a cut line. It's going to act like a cookie cutter. Now remember, I can't see the steps patch. There it is, and there it's not. But I'm going to take the original picture, this where the man's arm is. I'm going to start up here in his face so I can see my start line, and I'm going to come down to the shoulder or his collar of his coat, and I'm going to carefully follow this around through the edge of this coat is going to be actually my cutting edge. And as I come around this, I am forming the line that's going to cut that patch so that I have the man's shoulder to lean up against here. So I'm coming down to around his coat and to his pants and the little girl's head. And I'm going to come all the way to the middle of these people, all the way back here on the top, and then I'm going to reconnect with that little start line right there. The little circle shows up. When I click on it, it connects. Now, another thing that we need to do is when I use this polygonal lasso tool, notice up here in the top it says the feather is 0px or pixels. I'm going to change that to 1 and hit the return key or the enter key, and that puts it in place. That makes it the cut is not going to be a sharp, clean cut. It's going to be a little fuzzy, hairy cut, and that's in Photoshop what you really want, is to have your cut lines not quite as sharp because they're very noticeable that way. So this is a default. Maybe when you turn your machine on, once you have the feather at 1, it'll stay there, but check that to make sure you've got a 1 pixel feather, not a 0. And you don't want 5 or 6 or 7 either. That's too wide. It's too fuzzy. Okay, now there's the marching ants. Now turn on the eyeball for the steps layer. Make sure it's the blue one. Now you see what we're doing is we're going to be cutting all this area here. This is the new patch right here. And there's the boy and there's the man, but we're going to cut all this away. So where all this is going to cut this end of that patch off. So I hit the delete key. Bonk. Okay, so now we're back to the original man, but the new steps over here covering the boy. And I can either click inside with this tool and the marching ants goes away, or I can hit Command D and that will delete the marching ants or the marquee look. Okay, now let's continue with this. We've got this little boy's head. Remember we moved this over on the patch and we sort of have removed his head where it is there. An easy way to do that is just take get his head back, is to take the eraser tool and get a brush that's a fuzzy edge. This is the sharp edge. I want a fuzzy edge. Maybe about a 45 will work. And I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to start erasing. Now remember, I'm on that steps layer that I've made, I'm going to just erase up here and find his shoulder and his collar. Now behind him is this granite, and so I don't have to be too precise because I'm erasing, you know, from his ear back into a little bit of granite, but that's granite behind him anyway. So I just come up around and find his hair and find the top of his head. Now I'm erasing his face picture that's on the old or on the new patch, and I'm just going to erase that, and I'm going to take the eraser all the way to the edge of the patch, which is now where the man's hand is. And oh, look at there, there's a foot of that little boy. That's the original boy's little foot standing there. Well, we'll come back and take care of that in a minute. But I need to erase all of this patch that was there in the first place. And maybe there's some even down here around the little girl. Let's turn off the original copy and see what's left. All right, see, I've got all of his hat, or head, and there's no other ink out here from the place that we have put. This is the patch. Now, remember, we've cut this part away, and there's the original cut line. Let me show you something else about that original cut line that you need to deal with. If I turn the picture back on, you can actually see where the line, where it lines up here. There's a little difference in color and texture. The steps are all level, but there's a little texture. So to fix that, take off the original copy and come up with your eraser and just make a smooth, well, it's not smooth. You can see the eraser has got a non-sharp edge. It's a fuzzy edge, and I'm just dulling that edge, and the edge is dulled now. Now I turn this back on. This is the patch. This is the steps patch, and I've dulled that end. This end is fairly sharp. That's where the coat line is. But when I turn that back on, now you see you can't see the difference between the step patch here and the original step. What you do see, though, is this little boy's toe. Remember, if that's not there, he's there. And he's stepping down on his foot. Now, I'm going to go back to the original copy. That's going to be the active layer. And I'm going to take my cloning tool, and I'm going to come up here. This stone right here is fairly dark. I'm going to come up here where see, it's light over here. If I take that, I'm kind of light. I'm going to go up here where it's a little darker. And I'm going to put my cloning tool right there and hold down the Option key and click once. That takes the target of those pixels. Then I'm going to draw this down here and put it over his foot and just carefully put pixels where his foot is. Don't go up into that shadow because that's the shadow of the step that's there. I'm just going to wipe a few pixels. Don't go into the arm of the man. Just put some granite pixels here, and that covers that up. Now again, if it's a little lighter than the other part, that's okay. He's actually forming a shadow by just being there in the first place. But you can find a little darker granite pixels to put there. Don't interrupt the shadow. And if you do, you can come over here and actually get some more shadow and bring it into here and line it up and continue with that shadow. Don't go across onto his sleeve. So I've taken out the foot there of that little boy. And so what you have left now, if the steps is gone, you see I've kind of wiped his original foot. But when I put the steps back, they cover the little boy. The steps are all the same length and level, and everything's back to normal here. Okay, so that's the second part, is to take out the little boy and the steps. The third part is to come up here into this, the three boys up in the top here. I'm going to get a little closer, and I move my Navigator bar so I'm seeing these three boys. I'm going back to my cloning tool, and I'm going to get a little bit bigger brush, maybe 35. That's good enough. Now, the thing that I'm going to do here is take the stone. It's light, it's dark, it's medium, it's light, it's medium, and I'm going to use the light stone to cover these boys up, their heads, their torsos, their legs. Not that I don't like these little boys, but I just want them to be out of the picture. So, see this seam right here? I'm going to take my Option key and click right on the left side of that seam. Click, and then come down just above this boy's head and use the Option key to line the target up. Don't click your mouse yet. And when you have it lined up, then let go. Now click the mouse, and you're taking where that X is above, goes crosshairs, those pixels are coming down and filling in over these boys' head, and the seam is coming with it. Now I get down low enough, I start picking up the middle boy's head again. But as I come over here, I can sweep across. I don't want to get up into those seams up above, but I can get this color and come down and take care of that area. There's a seam over here. I can line up on the right side of that seam and then come down and reline it up on the seam, and then take the seam down and take out the white shirt of this first boy in the picture. And as I get down to start to pick up his pixels again, because I'm just removing pixels and putting them a little lower, then I can come back and get that seam again and realign it down here, and then come down and bring the stone all the way to this angled stone and start to take out the rest of the information that's there and bring it down. Now I'm going to mention this feature right here. There's a wood bench right here, and if you look on the other side over here, there's that same wood bench, only going the other way. So eventually I'm going to copy this piece right here and flip it, turn it the other way, and put it back on this side to take the place here. And these boys' hands and stuff are covering it, so I'm just going to make the stone take most of their bodies away, and then we'll use that other piece to finish the job. Okay, so I'm going down this seam now, and I'll go down to where that you can see that wood piece, and I'm taking out part of the boy here. Now there's a seam right here that's dark and light, and I'll use that to take down and work my way down his face. I can't go all the way because I'll run into something else. And I'll come up above here again and take the lights and mediums and darks and just rub him down until I'm got him out of the picture. Okay, so the seam right here, there's the good seam there that's depicting the difference of light and dark, and I'll use that and come down. There's a seam right here that I picked up. I'll cut that out. There's a seam that was washed away. I'll lengthen that. Matter of fact, that seam right there, I'm going to come down to this point and put that seam running that way. It's not quite the right perspective, but it's not, no one is really going to notice that until they get out their protractors and begin to figure that out. So I'm going to continue with this edge here and take it down to that level. Now the boy's legs right here have to come out, and so I'll work those down, and I can come over here on the steps and click on that and then line up with the steps and bring it over here and use my shadows and steps to finish this portion of the stonework. Now there's a seam that's running right here, and I'll take that seam and put it back in. There's a line here that is part of the masonry, so I'll just copy that line back there and put it in. So I'm getting that worked pretty well. There's a white stone here that I'll use to take out the legs of the boy in the blue pants. And when I get down here to the edge where the shoe is across the stone, I'll just use dark stone and light stone and work the shoe into the shadow part. And come back up the back side so that I'm taking out the rest of his legs and work up to where that wood feature is going to be, and let these blue pants just become part of the shadow of the seam line. And then above here I'll come back and just finish off what's there. The shirt. Now remember, I'm bringing in the detail here in a minute. I'm going to take this seam line here and come right down to where that will fit in there. Okay, his foot over here is casting a shadow because that stone is actually the same color all the way down to where it melts back into the step. And I'll just bring that step over, take off a little bit of that light on the top there. So now I've got the step fixed. All right, now sliding across with the red box of the Navigator tool, I'm going to, from the original copy, that's active right now, I'm going to come here and take a Polygonal lasso tool trip around this wood feature and capture the bench, and then I'm going to come down this angle here and just get all of this stone as it arranges itself around these steps, and complete the detail of this stone and wood feature, and that closes up. Now from the original copy I copy it, and above steps I make a new layer, and I call that bench, and I paste bench, Command B as in Victor. I paste that bench up there, and yep, there it is. Now the bench is here. I'm going to move it, put my finger on the space bar and slide over and move this and slide that. I have to turn it the other way. Now in order to do that, I have to have this thing selected. Just because I've done this doesn't mean it's selected per se. It's just a bounding box around this shape. In order to make this thing flip, I've got to do this. I'm going to take my magic wand tool and click out here. Now remember, nothing else is there because this is the only active bench, so nothing is there, but I'm still going to click in the outer part of this thing, and what I've done is I've selected all the negative space, and this isn't selected. All the negative space is selected. What I'm going to do is go to select and do inverse, and now the marching ants are marching all around. I've inversed it from the negative to the positive, and at that point too I'm going to go to that, back to edit and that transform and pass distort, and come all the way down to flip horizontal. Now watch that piece, it just flips, goes the other way. Turning back on the original copy and getting my move tool, I'm going to hit Command D and take off the marching ants and just slide this into place. Now, another thing I would caution you or ask you to do is to go to View and come down here where, if that snap check is on, just select snap and let go, and it unchecks snap. Snap is something that there's a hidden lines behind this picture, and snap likes to take you to that line. When you take snap off, then you can move this anywhere you want. With snap on, it's kind of hard to get this to be where you want it to be. Alright, so I'm going to move that in here and set it in place where it would be similar to where it was on the other side. This angle is a little not right, so I'm going to come down here to the corner and get my arrows to turn into the turn arrow, the curved arrow thing, and twist it down, just tilt it just a little bit and set it like that, and then apply that and then put it back in place where it would sit in this feature. Now notice the line here. If I turn this off, you can see that this angle still plays here, this stone. So I'm going to turn the bench off, come back with my Polygonal lasso tool, and just come down that stone and break back here and rejoin it, and then turn on the bench, and you see that area right here. I need to trim that off, so just hit delete, and now it's trimmed to the bench. Another thing is because of the shadow, Command D takes the marching ants away. Because of the shadow on the other side, this stone is darker than this stone. So I'm going to change the coloration of this stone. It's the layer selected. I'm going to go to Image, Adjust, and Levels. That's going to give me a box that shows me the dark shadows, the medium tones, and the lights. The lights is right off the scale here. I'm going to take the light tones and move it. You see what's happening? As I move it to the left, the stone is actually getting lighter. I'm adding more light to it. And I'm going to do that until the stone is about as light as the stone behind it here, the original stone. Now you can see an edge here and you can see an edge there. I'm going to OK that, and I'm going to get my eraser tool, and I'm going to come to that edge, and I'm just going to maybe get a little smaller tool here, maybe like 27, and I'm going to take off that shadow edge right there, so it becomes part of the original edge that was there on that stone. And then I'm going to come up this side and just until I get to that feature and just trim that back a ways. Now you can't see the edge. Now there is a stone there, and if I do this, you can see that there's the stone, and there it is back. And so all of this you've taken out of here, and you've just blended it better into what was there in the first place. And so now the stone is covering this lower stone, and the boys are gone from up here. We replaced it with light granite and seams and mortar, and so that's taken care of. Okay, so the last step we're going to deal with is this girl's teeth. Now to do that, I'm going to come in here very, very tight, and with my zoom tool, and it's hard to see it because the pixels are so big now, and I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this teeth. And I'm going to do my work on this teeth layer so you can see the difference. Eventually we'll put all these layers together as one layer and just flatten them all down. Now, what color are teeth? They're not white. If I come to my little eyedropper here, that can measure color. I'm going to measure the color of her front teeth right here. You see, it's sort of a grayish, it puts that color here in the foreground color. It's kind of a grayish brown. I'm going to take a very small brush. I've got 13 there. I'm going to go down to maybe 5 is the smallest. I might even come up here and manually take it down to 3 and hit the return key. Now, what I'm going to do is paint her teeth so that the gap isn't so wide. And I'm going to still have a gap and still have the same length, but just paint the teeth, the front 2 teeth, so they're more closer together and maybe the same color all the way around. So I'm getting the teeth to be a little more closer. And then I'm going to take a measure of the teeth. The tooth back here is a little darker. And so it's a little darker here, and I'm going to take the brush. Now this tooth is just coming in, so I'm going to lengthen it for full length. And over here, the tooth's gone all together, so I'm just going to put the narrower tooth in there and get that to work right. And then maybe level this tooth out. Now I can take my eraser tool, because remember this is a separate layer, and I can come back here. That's a little bit too big tool. I'll come back down to 5, and I can just erase off the tip of these things so that they can curve but to match the lip a little better. And so I've got our teeth. Now here's with the teeth, there's without the teeth. There's with the teeth, there's without the teeth. If I back off a little bit here, and we're not quite so close, when I turn those teeth on, it makes her mouth look a lot better. There's another thing that I could do. I'm not going to do it right now, but a lot of times I'll do this. I'll take the copy, I'll go around with my Polygonal lasso tool and take a picture of the mom's teeth and put the mom's teeth in the little girl's head. I'll size them so the girl's a little closer, so there might be a different size of teeth, but there's all kinds of little tricks that you do to fix this thing up. Okay, now at this point we have the picture where it's been worked on. The dress is fixed, the little boy is gone. I see my my bench here, or my steps, somehow that's dropped just a bit. I'm going to hit the up arrow there. Now they're online again. Something moved that. I might have hit the down arrow when I was working on something, but that fixes that. So we've got the dress, we've got the boy gone here, the 3 boys up here gone, the little piece of stone and wood moved over here, and her smile is a lot better. At this point, I would say File, Save As. Now I had it up here originally as Family Photo Fix Original, and now I'm going to change that word to Final. And I'm going to save it. Now when I've done this, I'm going to save it to the desktop and then eventually put it where I save things. When I've done this now is I've got all the layers in place to include the original. I've got the teeth, the bench, the steps, the dress, the original that I worked on, and then the original copy I worked on, and the original picture. It's not on, it's not showing. Now that saves it then with the layers, and I always save it with the layers, and then I have to prepare it to go off to be printed. If this is going to be a print, we're going to make a color picture of it, I have to do this. I'm going to go over here to the option bars, these 3 bars here, and remember I've already saved it as the Family Photo Fix Final. I've had the original so I can make the comparisons back and forth, and I've got the final. So I'm going to flatten this out now through the options, come to flatten image, and notice that, and it says even discard the hidden layers. This hidden layer is going to go away. Now notice all those layers when I say OK, it's now compressed into one layer, and it's the background and locked as we started out with. And so now this picture can be processed and sent off to a printer, not as a Photoshop. The next thing I'm going to do is say File, Save As, and I'm going to change it from Photoshop here to JPEG. See, it's .jpg here, it's JPEG. That way I can send it by email to a photo processing place, and they can make me 8x10s or 5x7s or whatever I'm doing with that. When I hit save, then I have now Family Photo Fix Final JPEG, and I'll make it the highest. 12 is the highest, and I'll save that. And now I have a JPEG version that's going to be used in a flat background, so that it can be used to make a print from. So that's the family fix, and that's the process you go to get there.